How many marketers does it take to change a light bulb? Millennials. Because the answer to every fucking question in marketing is millennials. You've all received this from some numbnut on LinkedIn that you know, right? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this, right? You ready? So here's Generation Y, the other name for our friends the millennials. As you see, they use tablets and smartphones, text or social media. Here's me over here, poor old Generation X. I can only use my personal computer now, apparently. I don't use a phone. I was born in the 70s, oh, what is this fucking phone thing? Here's my dad over here, right? Here's my dad, right? Somehow he's using his fucking car to do messages, right? He's in his driveway beeping, because I can't use the phone, I'm from 1945. So this is the official ranking for last year of the most socially responsible corporations, according to the independent Reputation Institute. I'm introducing a completely new metric to measure corporate social responsibility. I'm calling it Trustworthy Accounting Exchange, tax for short. It would be lovely to ask the bosses of Google, Microsoft, and Apple whether they think there's some kind of contradiction between being socially responsible and paying virtually no tax. It's about the bullshit of corporate social responsibility for companies that fail the fundamental test of it, which is pay the tax that pays for hospitals, roads, and education. Pay your tax, and then you can be socially responsible. So I'm sending it to hell. It's total bullshit, and I agree with the AANA members. We are regaled with articles about the need for a brand purpose pretty much on a daily basis. When we get to brand purpose, we reach very lofty places. We get to something like Starbucks will inspire the human spirit and save the world. And I think this is the problem with brand purpose. I think it has led to the ultimate apogee of bullshit among marketers who believe their brand is very important and is here to save the world. We've overestimated the role of brands in people's lives. There are 3 big companies that do brand valuation: Interbrand, Millward Brown's Brand Z, and Brand Finance. Fine companies, but what they do is pants. Let's do, I don't know, Apple, the #1 brand in the world. You ready? Interbrand says it's worth $170 billion. Brand Z, $247 billion. Brand Finance, $128 billion. For those of you without a quantitative background, that's $119 billion fucking dollars of difference.
So welcome to Lecture 2, Cutting the Bullshit and Getting Back to the Essential Strategic Marketing Tools. Our members often talk about how much marketing has changed in the last decade, more so than any other profession. But in keeping with the theme, today is about looking at the big fundamental marketing concepts and that some of us learned as undergrads, actually, or MBAs. So in this lecture, Mark will tackle the 10 recurring themes, critically assess them, cut them up, and decide whether they are still value and impact for marketing practice today. For those of you new to this series, here's what you need to know about Mark. He is indeed the master of marketing and branding and is widely acknowledged as one of the best instructors in the world. He has a PhD in marketing from Lancaster University and has taught at some of the world's leading business schools, including London Business School, MIT Sloan, and the University of Minnesota. But the reason we work with Mark is that he applies and tests what he preaches in the real world. Mark works extensively on real projects. He consults on brand strategy, market research, segmentation, CRM, brand extension. And his clients include McKinsey, PepsiCo, J&J, Sephora, Unilever, and of course, LVMH, who he's worked for 14 years. He is Taswegian, he is very forthright and will take no prisoners today, both on stage and in his writing that I'm sure you've seen in Australia and in the UK. So let it rip, Professor Ritson.
Hello everyone, hello, lovely to be here again. So in this session, we're going to take an hour and then we'll have our debate with our senior marketers in the panel. We're going to look at 10 core concepts in marketing at the moment. And these are the 10 we're going to go through. And I hope you agree. I haven't picked anything esoteric. I think all these concepts are familiar to you. You work with them. You know what they are. And also, I hope you agree that it's not going to be easy to work out which ones I'm going to say are useful and which ones are useless, at least at the opening point. That's what I intend to do. Half of these concepts, 5 of them, I'm going to send to marketing hell because they're useless. And half of them I'm going to elevate to marketing heaven because I think they're still some of the core topics of our discipline and are deserving of your attention and focus. Before we started this series, we surveyed the AANA members about their own personal take on these concepts, and we have a very nice response. 150 different senior marketers have all told us already on a scale of useful to useless how they rate the 10 concepts. And it's interesting what the results suggest. The two that no one was sure about were zero-based budgets and sales funnels, and I think I know why we're not sure about those two, and I'll come back to them. So they kind of sit in the middle in a kind of no man's land. The ones that you deem to be heavenly and incredibly useful, the most popular one was brand purpose, followed by differentiation, targeting, and SWOT analysis. They were the ones that were deemed the useful concepts across the group. And the less than useful ones were corporate social responsibility, brand valuation, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and millennials. So I'm going to agree and disagree as we go through these, but keep an eye on that because this is what the members thought, and I'm going to, in some cases, completely back you up, in other cases, disagree. But our purpose in this hour is to review these concepts, and for me to make a case, there are 5 you should focus on, and 5 I recommend you stop worrying about because I think they're overrated or pointless. So let's start with our first concept, which is brand purpose, rated by you, the AANA, as the most useful of them all. That's no surprise. There's been tons of research on marketers. This actual research is from Australia showing that in this case, 9 out of 10 marketers believe purpose is increasingly important to building brands. And we are regaled with articles about the need for a brand purpose pretty much on a daily basis. And you can see where brand purpose comes from, right? When you guys were trained back in the days when we were undergrads or even MBAs, we were trained on the famous benefit ladder. And it's a great old tool. It still has lots of relevance. Let's take Starbucks as an example. So you could position Starbucks on a product feature. Why don't we choose the fact that they train all their baristas extremely well? It's unlikely you'd see that ad campaign, but you could position on features. You could go one step higher and look at the product benefit of that feature. In this case, a well-made cappuccino. But you could go higher, right? You could go to the customer benefit of that, which is your cappuccino tastes great. And of course, we can go even higher in some cases to the emotional benefits of getting a great cappuccino, which is I feel superior and happy in the morning, yeah? And our job as marketers is to go up the benefit ladder as far as we can go. The higher we get, the stronger pull that our positioning will elicit. When we get to brand purpose, we reach very lofty places. We get to something like Starbucks will inspire the human spirit and save the world. And I think this is the problem with brand purpose. I think it has led to the ultimate apogee of bullshit among marketers who believe their brand is very important and is here to save the world. It's very hard to sell a mildly stimulating coffee drink and look at yourself each morning in the mirror like you're important. But if I believe that I'm here to inspire the human spirit, I suddenly find myself to be far more important and justified in the world. That's why I think brand purpose has so much import. And I think what's really happening is we've climbed the benefit ladder to the very top, and we've jumped off it into an ocean of bullshit underneath. Now, you might accuse me of exaggerating a bit. Trust me, I have not exaggerated. This is actually the current brand mission of Starbucks. It is not to make coffee. Oh, no. It is to inspire and nurture the human spirit. One person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. Yeah? Starbucks are going to nurture the human spirit. That is their fundamental purpose. And my point to you today is that's horseshit. And the reason it's horseshit is multifaceted. The first reason is that ain't differentiated. And I don't care how new the game is of brand purpose, we still have to differentiate ourselves versus competitors. To illustrate the lack of differentiation, let's play a little game I call brand purpose bingo, okay? I'm going to show you 6 brands that have all got very clear brand purpose statements or missions or something that alludes to some finer goal. And I want you to identify which brand and which mission go together, okay? They're all big brands. So we're going to look at Kellogg's, Starbucks, IKEA, Coca-Cola, Barclaycard, and Future Brand, all right? And I'm going to give you their actual brand purpose, corporate purpose, or brand mission statements. You ready? And I want you to see how many out of 6 you can get. Okay, let's go through them in no particular order. Let's make today great. Inspire moments of optimism. Get more out of today. Inspire the human spirit. Make everyday life better. Create a more positive future. All right? So, let's see if you can identify which brand is attached to which brand purpose statement. You ready? Fuck, I don't know either, right? The point I'm making is they're all the fucking same. Sitting in their offices, inspired by the love of humanity, mankind, and saving puppies, this looks like you're changing the world. But as you walk from one purpose-driven office to another, you discover differentiation is dead when it comes to brand purpose. Number 2, legitimacy. Remember when we used to do positioning, we had to say you had to be able to deliver on your promises? Remember those heady days of, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago? So it should apply to brand promise. If your brand promise is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, and particularly to inspire and nurture local neighborhoods, I wonder how you could back up that promise. Perhaps one radical disruptive idea is you could, I don't know, pay your fucking tax. Pay your fucking tax. I paid $600,000 in tax last year. I did, right? That's more than Starbucks have paid in Australia in the 13 years of operation. What the fuck's that all about? Not making it up. In the 13 years Australia hosted Starbucks here, they paid not $1 in tax. Now, you might say it wasn't particularly successful, and eventually, of course, they sold the business and moved back to the States. Maybe, maybe not. I think still they made a lot of money. So let's look at the UK instead, where Starbucks did pay tax. They paid £8.6 million of tax over that 10-year period, while generating revenues of £3 billion. It's fucking horseshit, and you know it. Don't talk to me about nurturing communities and the human spirit. Pay your tax. Because you know what we do with the taxes? That's how we nurture the hospitals and the roads and the educations and the nurses. And we can't do it if you're not nurturing them with your tax. You can't back this up, Starbucks. Number 3, next problem, execution. You may remember a couple of years ago, in America, Starbucks executed on this brand purpose of nurturing humanity by encouraging their baristas next to your name to write on your cup of warm cappuccino, race together, and attempt to have a discussion with you about racial equality before they handed over your beverage to them in the morning. Yeah? I know. It sounds great, doesn't it? This is the response from customers a day after they started doing that and writing race together on people's coffee cups and say, let's talk about race for a minute before we have this coffee, shall we? Let me give you just 3 of 700,000 wonderful tweets on how people felt about nurturing the human spirit before they got their cappuccino. Here's April. Not sure what Starbucks was thinking. I don't have time to explain 400 years of oppression to you and still make my train. Here's Cirque du Soleil. Let me explain this to Starbucks. I don't think you want black people on their way to work discussing race before they've had their coffee, bro. And finally, Sirius, Starbucks isn't going to cure racism. So let's just raise the wage so people aren't working 5 jobs to pay the bills. Consumers aren't stupid. Marketers are. I think these 3 people, and another 1,000 I could have shown you the tweets from, know more about brand purpose than every bloody marketer in Australia. We overestimate the role of brands. People don't want Starbucks to save the world. Now, I believe in race equality. I believe in gender equality. In sexual equality, in animal rights. I just don't want tax-dodging corporations telling me about it. It's not their place to do it. We've overestimated the role of brands in people's lives. Give me a nice cappuccino and give it to me in a place that I admire and end there. It's not a big thing. It's a small thing, and we can still be successful. Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, when he was pushed about this disaster for the brand, said, okay, we made a tactical mistake. So what? This isn't a tactical mistake. This is a strategic mistake. The baristas were only doing what the brand purpose told them to do, to nurture the human spirit. The strategy is wrong. The purpose is wrong, not the execution of it. And the final problem, ROI. As Schultz has said frequently, this brand mission is not altruistic. This is business. Values are a big part of both the balance sheet and the income statements of Starbucks. It's behind the performance, yeah? We're doing brand purpose because it's going to make us more money and make the business more successful. Now, this is a common refrain you hear often. There's even companies have the meaningful brand study every year, which demonstrates that on average, you'll get more of someone's wallet if you have a brand purpose. And you'll outperform the stock market if you have a brand purpose. Now here, we have a problem. I was having a few drinks with Sherilyn for the Marketing Academy, and she introduced me to this nutcase here, yeah? Delightful man. Dr. Simon Longstaff is a very smart, Cambridge-educated philosopher. And Dr. Longstaff runs the Ethics Center. And we were talking about brand purpose, and I was slightly pissed. He wasn't. I was slightly pissed, and we talked about it. And we came to the same conclusion for different reasons. He said, it's interesting because if you try and ever justify brand purpose by saying it has a return on investment, you instantly enter an ethical catch-22. So if an organization says the reason we do brand purpose, like Howard Schultz does, is because it makes us more money, the counter-argument is, well, if I showed you a different approach that was brand on purpose, that was borderline criminal and involved hurting people in a completely legal way, would you take that path? Oh, yes, I'd take that path for sure. Because the reason I'm doing this is ROI. So his very complex point is, if you try and justify brand purpose with ROI, you immediately undermine completely the brand purpose that gives you the ROI in the first place. And therefore, it's a total and utter waste of time. I do believe brand purpose does have a role for a tiny fraction of companies that began with purpose and then built brands. Those two hippies, Ben and Jerry, were far more interested in their ethics than they were in ice cream. And they built an ice cream brand in the image of their philosophy. That's different. There are a tiny proportion of brands who are purpose-led. But that's not McDonald's, and it's not Starbucks, and it's not all those other brands jumping on the bandwagon because it's the latest thing to do. And those brands, by the way, while they're fucking around with brand purpose and not worrying about proper differentiation, Coca-Cola last week delightfully spent all of its advertising budget in America saying, we live as many, we stand as one, based on the race problems that have been happening out there. Now that's awesome and fantastic. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola's in deep shit. And I would argue in the long term, those two things are linked together. The more you're trying to save the world and your carbonated beverage market share is declining, the more I think the two things are associated together. Come back to the real job of branding. So for that reason, I'm going to unfortunately send brand purpose all the way to hell. Number 2, heavenly or hellish sales funnels. You can make a strong argument that sales funnels are literally the original first theorem of marketing. Invented by this fun-loving fellow here, E. St. Elmo Lewis. He's the alpha marketer. He's marketer number 1, right? He began the process with this famous model that later became AIDA, that became the hierarchy of effects, that became sales funnels. You take a customer through a series of steps, resulting in sales at the end. Now, it's changed and it's morphed over the years, but fundamentally, at most business schools, we still teach a version of E. St. Elmo Lewis's model. Usually now it's awareness, interest, etc., leading to purchase. It's become extremely trendy to say that, particularly in a digital world, where of course it's all very disruptive and different, there's no such thing as funnels anymore. Jason John, for example, a couple of months ago in Advertising Age, in today's digital world, the sales funnel is dead. It's outdated and it's dead. I disagree with Mr. John. And in order to prove to you the sales funnel is not dead, I'd like to use a piece of evidence. I'd like to use Jason John's fucking article entitled, "The Sales Funnel is Dead," okay? I'm going to use his opening paragraph to show him that his whole column is nonsense. You ready? So let me zoom into the column and let me show you the most simple sales funnel of all. So his opening sentence. A few weeks ago, I was at work when I remembered that my coffee maker had been making weird noises and was doing a less than stellar job of producing a perfect cup. That's awareness that he has a problem. Next, I took a break from checking email to run a quick search on my laptop for best coffee makers. I read a couple of reviews. Later on that evening, I was greeted by an ad. I went into the stores. That would be interest or information search. Then, down the bottom there, it says, while I stood there in the aisle, I decided to order my coffee maker from a different, less expensive store when I got home. That sounds to me like a fucking decision. And finally, when he was at home, he ordered his new coffee maker from the comfort of my couch on my laptop. What exactly is his point? Because it appears not only is he wrong, he's diametrically opposed to what he's just said in the title above the paragraph. I don't make this up. I don't think sales funnels are dead. I think they're more relevant than ever. The problem we have is mixing up the sequence of steps the customer goes through with the tools that we use to drive the customer through the process. Clearly, they have changed. But the funnel itself is always going to be relevant. Now, the problem is everyone's doing funnels wrong. Now, forgive me, this is the most basic one of all my slides, but I feel it's important. First thing off is, you see the textbook model of a funnel? Forget about it. It's not relevant to you. It was meant to be in a textbook. Build your funnel from your qualitative data. Make it as specific as possible. So get rid of this and build something unique. Now, I can't show you ones that I've built for my clients because they're all proprietary, so I have to give you another generic one. But imagine building one that has very specific steps, unique to you, your steps and your sequences. So it might be, you get aware, you consider, you prefer, you buy. Build it to your satisfaction. Next, put your net promoter score from your customers on the end and use that as your final advocacy or happiness metric, okay? The proportion who are promoters. Now, populate the thing. We look at these things, they're meant to be populated. Imagine 100 consumers at the end of that red box over there. Now, where do they go? How many of them get awareness? How many of them consider? How many prefer? It's a hierarchy model. The number should always go down. You can't consider a brand you're not aware of, yeah? Work it out from some quant research. Ask 4 questions in your research. You'll be able to fill it out. Next, don't look at the percentages because the percentages are super misleading here. You might look at 21% preference and say, oh, that seems low. It's not low because it's 21 over 44, yeah? Look at the conversion rates from the previous step. So they look like this instead. 44 over 58 is 75%, for example, okay? Now suddenly it starts to talk to you. It starts to tell you, hey, here's the problem. And this is the step where you get involved with strategy. You look at your funnel and you imagine it really as a pipe, yeah? Now into this side of the pipe, I'm going to pump 100 customers. And if I was a genius marketer, out the other end of the pipe, 100 customers would turn into loyal sales. Now that never happens because your pipe, as you may notice here, has got big bloody holes in it. And each of those holes bleeds customers. Your job as a marketer is to work out which of those holes am I going to fix this year? Because by fixing it, the water keeps moving. And eventually, as it crosses those other holes, it turns into money. Yeah? Now, be careful here. Look for the biggest hole. Look for the hole that's the easiest to fix. Look for the hole at the end of the pipe where if you fix it, it turns into money. Yeah? Make a choice. I always know a shit marketer because she's got 14 fucking objectives and none of them are going to come true. A good one, they've got one. Choose one hole. Fix it, there'll be other years. Fix one hole and it'll turn into money. Now, how do you fix it? You call it out and you write an objective that says, I'm going to fucking fix that hole. Yeah? You write what's called a SMART objective. I apologize for the simplicity of this, but we've forgotten this art. SMART, specific, measurable, ambitious, realistic, time-bound objectives. Let me show you what a SMART objective doesn't look like. It doesn't look like this wank here, right? I want to improve brand love among consumers using our brand purpose and our new digital tool set. But that's what they look like. If I talk to your agencies, and I do repeatedly, this is what they get, right? Shit begets shit, as you may know, right? This is not an objective. This is what A.G. Lafley calls a dream that will never come true, yeah? You're already dead. You're already dead. It's got tactics in there. It's all wrong. Here's a SMART objective. Increase unaided awareness in the accessible and easy segment from 58% to 75% by December 2017. Now, I can pay you a bonus, I can fire you, I can brief an agency, I can do everything from that place. But these have disappeared from Australia client plans. They're gone. You talk to your agencies, they'll tell you they don't even get an objective, not even a shitty one. They're asked to come up with one for the client because they have no fucking idea what they're doing. We don't have a strategy anymore. We've got a vague love of doing digital stuff, and that's about it. You need this thing. You need it because it opens the door to many things that you no longer have access to. Media neutrality, briefing agencies properly, yeah? As we'll see later, zero-based budgeting, proper objectives. I'm a big fan, actually, of Jim Squires, who's the new Director of Marketing Operations for Instagram. He's asked recently, should marketers be taking budget out of TV to put on Instagram? Now, the usual digital moron would say, oh, yes, you should, it's a new world, blah, 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 blah. What Jim Squires said was very, very clever. He said, that is a marketer's decision. The way I think about approaching it is, what is the objective I'm trying to achieve? What is the audience I want to hit? Look at the overall media mix, the objective, and where can I most efficiently reach people and make decisions based on that. Bravo, Mr. Squires, yeah? Because clients aren't doing that. And the key word in Jim Squires' statement is objective. If you don't have a smart objective, you can't do this shit. You don't know what the right media is because you don't know what your objective is. Strategy before tactics. Shit briefs. Australian shit briefs, yeah? Again, if I talk to your agencies after 6 pints, they'll tell you every brief they've got this year is shit, yeah? No strategy, no positioning, brand purpose, and we want to engage with our customers using digital, right? The fuck is that? It's not a brief, right? The worst brief, I'd love to show you some of the briefs I've seen. I can't, it's such a shame because they're fucking terrible. So instead, I'm going to show you a famously bad brief, which is better than most of your briefs, okay? Here's the bad brief. It was written in 1969 by a very young Michael Jagger, okay? So Mick Jagger had to get an album cover for his Sticky Fingers album, and he hired a creative you may have heard of called Andrew Warhol. This is the brief. You ready? Dear Andy, I'm really pleased you can do the artwork for our new hits album. Here are 2 boxes of material which you can use, and the record. In my short, sweet experience, the more complicated the format of the album, e.g. more complex than just pages or fold out, the more fucked up the reproduction and agonizing the delays. But having said that, I leave it in your capable hands to do whatever you want. And please write back asking how much money you would like. Doubtless, a Mr. Al Steckler, this is their manager, will contact you in New York with any further information. He will probably look nervous and say, hurry up, take little notice. That's a better brief than the ones you give to your fucking agencies, yeah? Who's my customer, yeah? Properly identified. What is my objective? Properly written, smartly. And what's my position? Not saving the world and making puppies happy. What the fuck do I want to communicate to that target audience in that objective? That's all you've got to do. That's your job. Don't ask the agencies to do it. They can't do it. It's not their job. Their job is to design the creative. Sales funnels go straight to heaven. It's not that I think they still have a role. I think they're more important than ever in the multimedia, digitally obsessed world we live in. Next one, targeting. So, as you know, we've evolved over the last 100 years in marketing from selling to mass marketing to target segments. And you know, I come from the old school. I believe in segment, target, and then position, the holy trinity of marketing. I don't think you can do it any other way because that's what marketing is. It's always been that way. There's always some moron that turns up that tells you, oh, it's all different now, you've got to use a rhomboid and call it something else. But the reality is you segment, you target, and then you position. That's how you make money, at least in my experience with my clients. But remarkably, and maybe CRM has been a little bit of an evolution from there, we're now returning back to the world of mass marketing. Incredible statements in the last 12 months. Now, this very qualified and very senior marketer is Bruce McCall. He's just retired, formerly the global CMO of Mars. And he said something earlier this year that made me spit my coffee out in front of me. He said the following: I'm not a great believer in targeting. Our target is about 7 billion people sitting on this planet. Our task is to reach as many people as we can, to get them to notice us and remember us, to nudge them and hopefully get them to buy us once more this year. This is mass marketing, coming from a very smart, very experienced marketer. And it's extraordinarily dangerous because most marketers, not half as smart as him, never wanted to target in the first place because they never believed that by focusing you could be better. Now, the reason a CMO is saying that is because of Byron Sharp. Byron Sharp. Byron Sharp, as you may know, has written a wonderful book called How Brands Grow. And he says things like this all the time. The marketing textbooks have been saying for 40 years, mass marketing is dead. It's rubbish. It's just not true. Now, to be fair to Byron, first of all, his book is awesome. And it is a properly new insight into marketing. And it's the great book of the last 10 years. But the targeting piece is totally fucking wrong. You can mass market in special conditions. And I think he's right. And he doesn't call it mass marketing. He calls it sophisticated mass marketing, which is mass marketing with a cravat and a cigar. But nonetheless, it's dangerous because not everyone's as smart as Byron. And the message sometimes comes out as being, oh, floodgates open. We're going after everyone now because that's what the most important marketing professor in the world has been saying. So I work for clients all the time. I worked for a client last week, a very smart client with a very big launch. And I have to tell you, I was very pleased. They had fabulous segmentation. I mean, proper world-class segmentation. And they had really good positioning. They were running correlation coefficients to measure the attributes and how much they drive purchase. It was properly good stuff. But when we went through the plan, it was interesting because after the segmentation, we went to positioning. And of course, they're missing the bit in the middle, the Holy Trinity, the targeting bit. You got to target for two very good reasons. Segmentation is not strategy. Market segmentation is about the market. If your competitor is as smart as you, in theory, they should build exactly the same segmentation as you. It's just descriptive. Targeting is the strategic step, where you make the choice. Who do I go for in that segmentation mix? Which segments am I going to focus upon? And when we get to positioning, you try positioning to everyone. You can't do it. Even Byron Sharp can't do it, which is why in his book he talks about being distinctive, not differentiated, because he also believes in mass marketing. When you try and target everyone, you end up with everyone who want different things and every single competitor. Try taking a target segment who all want the same shit. Suddenly, positioning gets better. And suddenly in a segment, not only are all the customers the same, there's usually only one big fat competitor, not four. And that makes it a lot easier to position against as well. So the point is, I believe in targeting as the ultimate strategic decision. And maybe the decision, as per how brands grow, is you target everyone, but that's your decision. And don't be afraid to decide, no, I won't, I'll just target them. It's your strategic choice. Remember what the great strategy professor Michael Porter said. The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. Every fucker's going to do something. What are you not going to do? It's the segments you don't target. Yeah? It's the words you don't cram into your positioning, yeah, that define you as a proper strategic marketer. So again, I don't disagree with Professor Sharp. In some markets, the choice should be target everyone. Sophisticated mass marketing makes sense in certain categories. But let me tell you, there are many other categories where it does make sense to target. I work in actual categories where Pareto's principle still applies, where 20% of the customers genuinely give me 80% of the profit pool. That happens. Yeah? Even if it's 20% giving me 60, I'm still interested in the 20%. I want to target. I work in markets where I've got 5 full-time sales reps and 480 surgeons. Yeah? I got to target because I can't cover the market. This isn't always about consumer goods. When I launch new products with clients, targeting is fundamentally crucial. Fundamentally crucial. The first customers I get drive all my success later. Targeting in these situations is like walking into a house. If I walk into the garage, the wrong segment, the only place left to go is back out again. If I walk into the hallway, the right segment, 6 more doors open up to me. When you launch a product or service, targeting and getting the right segment first to start the dynamic flow is, in my experience, crucial. And finally, don't forget that positioning point. You can't write good positioning if you're trying to go after everyone, because everybody wants something different. You know, you look at Australian brands and their positioning, and we'll talk about this in the final of the 3 talks, but my God, the horror of it, right? It's the same fucking usual suspects again and again and again and again. Innovation, integrity, trust, quality, and value. Why is the positioning so totally pointless? Actually, the positioning isn't the problem. The problem is the brands are trying to target everyone. And when you try and target everyone, you end up with these inane, pointless values that everybody else has got as well. So for these reasons, targeting is definitely staying in marketing heaven and not going to hell. Our next concept, brand valuation. Whoa. In theory, brand valuation is heavenly. Remember what we were all told about brand valuation. You're going to show that your brand has a value, an asset value that we can put on the balance sheet. And you're going to go to your CFO and go, oh, by the way, don't you know my brand's worth $4 billion? And he or she's going to say, fuck, I didn't know that. And then you're going to say, and also I've increased it by $500 million in the last 2 years thanks to my marketing. And the CFO goes, Jesus, you're the most important person in the company. Fuck, I got marketing completely wrong. Come to the boardroom, be in charge. Fuck, I'm completely useless. You're the genius. And blah, blah, blah. None of that happened. In theory, brand equity and the financial valuation of it is perfect. In practice, it's pants. Let me demonstrate its pants. There are 3 big companies that do brand valuation. Interbrand, Millward Brown's Brand Z, and Brand Finance. Fine companies, but what they do is pants, right? They all produce the top 100 most valuable brands in the world, right? Have you never noticed? None of it makes any sense. They publish it every year. Fucking journalists write about it. Look at the numbers. They don't make any sense. Look. Let's do, I don't know, Apple, the #1 brand in the world. You ready? Interbrand says it's worth $170 billion. Brand Z, $247 billion. Brand Finance, $128 billion. For those of you without a quantitative background, that's $119 billion fucking dollars of difference. We can't agree on the value of the world's biggest brand within $100 billion. That's half the gross national product of Scotland. Coca-Cola, very famous brand. You ready? Interbrand says it's worth 78 billion. Brand Z says it's worth 84 billion. Brand Finance says 36 billion. That's twice as much. What? There's always going to be some variance in valuation. It's subjective. But one of them thinks it's worth twice as much as the other firm. Does that sound right to you? Or here's Visa. You ready? Interbrand says $7 billion. Brand Z says $92 billion. Brand Finance says $9 billion. That's 85 fucking billion dollars of difference. Hey, that's 12 times. Someone thinks it's worth 12 times the amount of the other group. Or 15 times Visa's net income for 2014. It doesn't make sense. Why do finance people think marketers are fluffy? Because we are. Because we are. Anyway, I've been writing this every year. Every year the brand valuation tables come out, and every year I write in marketing, we get a column that says, pretty sure brand valuation is a waste of time. But I make the point, look, out of the three big firms, maybe one of them's right and the other two are totally wrong. I can't tell. And in my column once, I said this about 3 years ago, I said what we need is an Archimedean point of comparison, some kind of truth, so we can see who's got it right and who's got it wrong. And to my delight, last year, a company spoke to me, sent me a letter, a beautiful letter from Switzerland, a company called Markables. And they said to me, we read your article, ding, I'm happy if anyone reads anything I write, ding. We've done the analysis, ding, and here's the results, ding, 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 ding. So they said, we've compared, over the last 10 years, any situation where a company paid for a company, and in there was an allocated amount paid for a brand, the brand equity, purchase price. And we've compared it to the brand valuation that the company said the brand was worth in the brand valuation league table in that year. So you can now compare reality to perception. So, for example, Compaq was bought by Hewlett-Packard in 2002, and the brand price that was paid was $1.4 billion. So to be clear, Hewlett-Packard, on top of all the other money, paid $1.4 billion to buy the Compaq brand. In that same year, Interbrand valued the brand at being worth $9.8 billion. So they were 700% wrong. 0 is the right answer here, right? 100 is either half or twice as much. They were 700% wrong. Amil, bought by United Health in 2012. The brand was paid $611 million. Brand Z valued that year as being worth $295 million. So again, they're 100% wrong. And actually, Markables found 160 examples across the three firms to compare reality with estimation. Now, what you should see, if these firms were close to good, is plus or minus 20%. That's the fair variance in estimating value. Either above or below by 20%, it looks something like this. Slightly above, slightly below. Doesn't look like that. Let's go through the three firms. Let me show you their performance. Let's start with the most accurate brand valuation firm in the world, which is Millward Brown with their Brand Z valuation. They're only 98% off. It's a Pyrrhic victory, right? But they are the number one. They're only 98% off. As you can see here, they're just as likely to be 100% off as they are to be bang on the money. But that makes them a lot better than Interbrand, who are, as you see here, a little bit further off, 196% off, okay? 196% off. So they're, well, hopeless, I would say. But that makes them a lot better than Brand Finance, who is, wait for it, 323% off. Imagine you're selling your apartment in Sydney, and you get 3 of the leading real estate firms in. I'm not letting go yet. One of them says it's worth 1.7 million. One of them says it's 2.6 million. One of them says it's worth 4 million. In the end, you have to fucking sell it for $850,000. What would you conclude? You'd say this valuation thing, it's a load of bollocks. Well, it is a load of bollocks, and we're going to send brand valuation completely to hell. In theory, it's beautiful. In practice, it doesn't stack up. Now, let's have a pause now. It's halftime, and let me tell you my favorite joke. You ready? How many marketers does it take to change a light bulb? Millennials. Because the answer to every fucking question in marketing is millennials. So let's debate millennials, not for long, right? Every fucking article, millennials are playing Pokemon Go, right? This is the spike in interest in millennials in the last 2 years, right? According to my internet search, for every one article about any other demographic group, there are 42 articles about millennials. We are obsessed with them. We are stalking them. And of course, we're stalking them in particular because reaching millennials in the digital world. Let's imagine for a second I started my talk with this chart. And I talked to you about a new segmentation framework that I've created based on country of origin. And I said, there's some different segments I've discovered, yeah? There's the Indian who's friendly and likes spicy food. There's the Pom who likes to whinge a lot and is shit at sport. There's your Afro-Caribbean who's easygoing and into reggae. There's your Scotsman who's always drunk and trying to save money. And there's your Frenchman who's arrogant, likes romance, is always trying to have sex with your wife, yeah? You'd say to me, that's inappropriate, it's stereotypical, and it's not correct. And I'd say, actually, you're right, this is not appropriate. So how the fuck is that appropriate? You've all received this from some numbnut on LinkedIn that you know, right? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this, right? You ready? So here's Generation Y, the other name for our friends the millennials. As you see, they use tablets and smartphones, text or social media. Here's me over here, poor old Generation X. I can only use my personal computer now, apparently. I don't use a phone. I was born in the 70s, you know, oh, what is this fucking phone thing? Here's my dad over here, right? Here's my dad, right? Somehow he's using his fucking car to do messages, right? He's in his driveway beeping because I can't use the phone. I'm from 1945. Fucking horseshit, right? So let's talk about segmentation like proper segmentation rather than made up horseshit, yeah? So my favorite old professor is a guy called Bill Stanton. He's a great old marketing professor, last long gone. My favorite definition of segmentation. Market segmentation is the process of dividing the total heterogeneous market for a good or service into several segments, each of which tends to be homogeneous in all significant aspects to each other and heterogeneous to the other segments. We're all the same inside on key things, and we're different from the others, yeah? It's a good definition. Demographics were never meant to be a segmentation variable. In Australia, they somehow became one. You find a group that want the same shit, and then you see if they're all male, female, old, young. But you start with behavior and attitudes. Now, what's delightful about this is a few months ago, a company called Futurecast did a major piece of research to understand the millennial mindset and show how it was different from other demographic groups. And unfortunately, they did a really good bit of research. So they sampled 2,500 American customers, age 18 to 65, asked them 200 different attitudinal belief statements, measured it, and then showed how the demographics, how the different age-based cohorts had different mindsets. Here's what they found. Oh, and they were measuring how millennials are different on innovation, purpose, of course, social, self, and accessibility. And here's how millennials differ from the other groups. On innovation, on purposefulness, on social circle. The only reason the boomers are down is because most of their friends are dead. Accessibility, and self. Now, again, some of you don't have a statistics background, so let me help you. That's 2/5 of fuck all. It's a rounding error on that scale. It literally is. It's not meaningful. These guys set out to prove the millennial mindset and managed to disprove that it exists. Look, they're the same. They're the same. Now, what do millennials want from work? As you've heard from all kinds of morons, oh, they're very different, hard to manage because they come from a new digital group, right? Millennials in the workplace. The IBM Institute for Business Value did a massive survey, 1,800 employees in 12 countries, 6 different industries, a battery of attitudinal and behavioral questions about work. You know what they found? Absolutely fucking nothing. They're the same. Now, they are young. They'll get old, yeah? It's not different. It's just young. It's not anything different. And the Harvard Business Review recently concluded on this and many other studies, while pithy descriptions of what makes millennials unique are presented as self-evident and seem to have a ring of truth about them, very few are supported with solid empirical research. On the contrary, a growing body of evidence suggests that employees of all ages are much alike than different in their attitudes and values at work. To the extent that any gap does exist, they amount to small differences that have always existed between younger and older workers throughout history and have little to do with the millennial generation per se. It's nonsense. It's made up mythical nonsense. So we're going to send millennials straight to hell. They have one advantage, though. Anyone talking about, writing about, presenting about millennials is a moron. and doesn't know marketing. It will help you identify who gets it and who doesn't. Millennials don't qualify as a segment. They're not the same within, and they're not different without. And anyone who hasn't worked that out doesn't understand segmentation. And if they don't understand segmentation, with respect, I think they're a moron. No, I do. I think you have to question these things. It doesn't stand up. Corporate social responsibility, speaking of things that don't stand up. So, CSR. There's a wonderful company called the Reputation Institute which measures CSR every year. And they create, kind of like the valuation companies, a top 10 of the most socially responsible corporations. Here's the list for 2015. According to their in-depth analysis of many different variables, the top 10 global CSR companies are Google, BMW, Walt Disney, Microsoft, Daimler, Lego, Apple, Intel, Rolls-Royce, Rolex. Okay, and they all have scores, and you can see there they are there. So this is the official ranking for last year of the most socially responsible corporations, according to the independent Reputation Institute. I would like to launch my new system for measuring corporate social responsibility here in Sydney today at this venue. I'm introducing a completely new metric to measure corporate social responsibility. I'm calling it Trustworthy Accounting Exchange, TAX for short. And what I'd like to do is use a long-standing, they're not normally used for market research, but they do have that purpose. It's a new company that does market research called the Australian Taxation Office. And I'd like to share with you how these wonderfully socially responsible corporations, how they've been paying their tax for the year 2013-14, which is the last published set of figures. So, you ready? Here's the top 10. Let's look at their Australian corporate tax payments. That's how much each of them paid in tax for the full financial year 13 to 14. Google managed $9 million. Yeah? That's only 20 times what I paid, right? Now, okay, Daimler did 54, Apple did 74. That sounds a lot, but is it really? Well, if you look at corporate tax as a percentage of taxable income, and the level is almost 30%, the good news is most of them do pay their fair share. But then you should look again. Apple only generated $247 million of income. That seems a little short, doesn't it? But that's taxable income. That's money that's registered as income and taxable. They made a little bit more than that in Australia, but some of it, for various reasons involving Ireland, Bermuda, and the Netherlands, never actually made it through our tax system. In the case of Apple, here in Australia, they actually generated revenues of $6.1 billion. And those giants of corporate social responsibility managed to pay $74 million in tax that year. It's not as bad as America, where current estimates suggest that they have managed to avoid paying $59 billion in tax. So if you look at that as a proportion, their corporate tax as a percentage of total income is 1, 2, 3%. Now, these are not random companies. These are the 10 most socially responsible corporations in the world. That's why I'm picking on them. Maybe I can put it more cleanly in perspective. The average Australian marketer this year will earn $76,307. And what does that mean? It means that by current tax levels, assuming you pay your tax properly, of course, means that you would pay about $16,000 in income tax. Now, you've got it wrong, see, because if you could follow these socially responsible organizations and have a similar tax regime to them, you'd end up paying, oh, I don't know, about $1,500. A tenth of what you're currently paying. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? It's a pity, isn't it a shame we couldn't ask these socially responsible corporations to explain how they can be socially responsible corporations but not really pay any tax? It would be lovely to ask the bosses of Google, Microsoft, and Apple whether they think there's some kind of contradiction between being socially responsible and paying virtually no tax. Oh, I know, we could, because last year there was a Senate hearing on tax minimization where the 3 Australian bosses of Google, Apple, and Microsoft were asked to explain what the fuck was going on. I give you the giants of corporate social responsibility explaining their tax payments.
Not implying or saying that any of this is necessarily illegal behaviour. That's tax evasion, that's a matter for the tax office. But the question is, and I'm sure this has been put to you before, the morality of having these kinds of structures and whether there is a greater corporate and social responsibility your companies have that you're not meeting.
We're not opposed to paying tax. What we're opposed to is being uncompetitive And because I said we have competition sitting at this table and all around the world. And when I think about the morality of it, I think the people who need to answer what is that right number, quite frankly, are the people sitting on your side of the room. And what we need to do is make sure that we're living up to that.
I asked you about the allegation that Professor Ting has made in his submission, that basically you have an international tax avoidance structure and that it's a double Irish sandwich with Dutch associations. Now, let me ask you, what is a double Irish sandwich with the Dutch affiliations?
Senator, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, come on.
And
come on. You haven't come here today to say that.
we reported all of our revenue and all of our costs.
Oh, no, I asked you how much of that went overseas.
Our net profit was $250
How much of the money went overseas? How much of that $6 billion paid by Australian consumers went overseas? Can you please tell us that?
I'll take that question on notice to give you a specific
You've come to this
number.
inquiry. Are you serious? You've come to this inquiry on tax minimisation and aggressive tax minimisation, and you weren't expecting a question like that?
We pay for all of our products.
No. Answer the question, please, Mr. King. How much of the $6 billion that Australian consumers have paid for Apple products actually have gone overseas? It's a very simple question.
So we buy all of our products from international subsidiaries at an arm's length price.
You're not going to answer the question, are you?
What I can...
You get the idea, do you not? It goes on. Now, let's be clear what I'm saying. Those companies are not doing anything illegal. What's more, they're doing something very smart, which is they're protecting profits by not paying the full possible tax amount. I would do the same thing. If my accountant came to me and said, I can get you legally an income tax of 1%, I would take the fucking deal faster than you can say tax minimization. No question. And I'd sit back for the rest of the year in my much larger armchair, smoking much better cigars, not having a worry about that. But what I wouldn't do is get on this fucking stage and tell you I'm socially responsible. I'd keep quiet and enjoy my cigars. This isn't a session about tax minimization. It's about the bullshit of corporate social responsibility for companies that fail the fundamental test of it, which is pay the tax that pays for hospitals, roads, and education. Pay your tax. And then you can be socially responsible. So I'm sending it to hell. It's total bullshit, and I agree with the AANA members. Okay, next one. Heavenly or hellish, we move on to zero-based budgets. So zero-based budgets are dead interesting. They were invented in the 1970s by a guy called Peter Furr. And they're really not a marketing tool. They were used as an accounting approach originally. But what happened was they sort of got adopted in the 80s by some marketers. And in particular, they were beloved of the private equity funds that would use zero-based when they went into a newly acquired company. And actually, 3G Capital put them into Kraft and Heinz when they made that acquisition not that long ago. And so zero-based is now a big part of the Kraft Heinz marketing approach. As you may have read, Unilever have adopted it, as have Mondelez, and now Coca-Cola. So some of the biggest marketers in the world are using zero-based budgeting to do their marketing budgets. And in fact, McKinsey now estimates that the number of companies mentioning zero-based budgeting on a quarterly earnings call is going through the roof. It is coming to you. If you're part of a multinational and later an Australian organization, bets are in the next 5 to 10 years, zero-based budgeting will get introduced in your company. Now, to understand zero-based budgeting, let me pause and enjoy how fucking stupid your budgeting system is right now, okay? This is the way your marketing budget is set in almost every case here. Maybe statistically there'll be 3 people in the room that don't do it this moronic way, but the rest of you, this is how your marketing budget is set. Are you ready? It's a stunning piece of stupidity. So, no, it is. A CFO in Sydney, or more likely in Zug, or in Cincinnati, takes a look at your 2016 sales, your sales for this year. Then she looks at the CAGR. So your sales for this year might be, I don't know, $10 million. Then she takes a basic compound annual growth rate over the past, let's say, 5 years. And let's say you're doing really well and the market's growing at 10%, or your sales are growing at 10%. She applies the CAGR to the 2016 figure that you're going to achieve and comes up with the fact that next year you should hit $11 million. Then she applies what we call an advertising to sales ratio. So she takes a percentage of that figure to be spent on advertising, but all marketing as well. Let's say it's 5% of sales. She multiplies 5 by 11, and we end up with $550,000. That's your marketing budget for next year. Now let's pause, because this doesn't make any sense. If I explained this to an undergraduate student, they'd go, that doesn't make any sense. First of all, if I already fucking know how much money I'm going to make next year, why are we bother doing any marketing? Instantly, everything you do is a cost, which is wrong, yeah? I've already worked out how much money I'm going to make. Second, where does that figure come from, the 5%? Do you know? It comes from a famous database called the SOMA database. Straight out of my ass. CFOs use it all the time. Sometimes it goes up, usually it goes down. There's no strategic rationale for it. Yeah? I don't know why you're laughing, that's how your budget was set. Yeah? That is how your budget was set, right? The thing about zero base is it's better than that. Don't fear the zero. There's been some people who are so worried, oh, it's zero base, that sounds bad. It sounds like I'm going to get no money. You start with zero. It's a much better process. So, zero base. We're going to start with no idea how much we're going to invest into our marketing next year. And the thing that agencies don't like, I'm not pre-allocating any of the money anywhere. Because I don't know what I'm going to do with my tactics, because I haven't worked out what my strategy is yet. Imagine that world, right? I'm starting every year afresh. And then you just do your job. You do your marketing job properly. You do your research. You do segmentation, targeting, and positioning. You set smart objectives, not fluffy, empty wishes. You set proper smart objectives. You work out what's the value of achieving those objectives in dollar terms, which you can do if they're smart because they got numbers in them, right? Very important, you analyze that value, because it doesn't all happen on January the 1st, yeah? You've got to phase or annualize the money, or you'll break yourself on it. And then you bring your agencies in. Now, this is a key point that we seem to miss in Australia. You finish your strategy, and then bring in your agencies, yeah? See how that works? And then they do the tactics off your brief, yeah? What we don't do is what we seem to have descended into Australia, which is you generally bring in some agencies and mumble something about digital and millennials, and the agencies then go, what the fuck are we going to do? They haven't got a strategy, man. Just make something up for them. Give them something. They need something, right? No, this is the story your agencies will give you after 6 pints, yeah? So you brief your agencies on target, position, objectives. The agencies come back and say, we could do this. We think it will cost about that. You pick the right agencies. You present your plan to the senior team. And unlike these marketing plans that just waft around in the air, a good zero-based marketing plan ends with two things. Here's how much investment I need next year, and here's how much money I'll make you. Yeah? Doesn't it sound better than some moron in Zug who's never even been to Australia telling you you've got $550,000? And in my experience with zero-based, when we've put it into a client I've worked for overseas several times, as many times as not, we get more money in the marketing budget than less. But it's done in the right way. Now, it causes panic. When I've put this into clients, the finance guys have a heart attack because they think the marketers are in charge of the budget. The reality is most of it is still top-down. The CFO has already told the street, here's how much money I'm going to deliver next year. And that CFO has called the MD in Australia and gone, I need $400 million out of the Australian sales figures. So that's all top-down. The bit that's bottom-up, the bit that's zero-based, is the marketing bit that we do. We present a marketing plan and a proposal for investment. And the managing director gets to play option theory with his or her marketing plans. And that's the bit that works. The shit plans get nothing. Why would we put company resources into shit plans? And the good plans get what they ask for. But mind you, when Christmas comes, they'd better have our money like they promised us. And we get better. We put ourselves in the position of delivering, rather than designing ads as if we're a cost. Working at the behest of the finance team who see us as a cost because that's how they set our budgets. Zero-based budgets are a great thing. They go to heaven, but they will challenge you to do your job properly in order to be able to deliver them. Coming to an end. So, differentiation. To understand differentiation, we must understand the oligopoly. An oligopoly, by a dictionary definition, is a state of limited competition in which a market is shared by a small number of producers or sellers, okay? We've studied oligopolies for many years. They're like a monopoly, but there's a few more players, yeah? 3 or 4 brands, each getting 25, 35% share. We know that in an oligopoly, market orientation is low. No one gives a shit about customers because everyone's winning. Innovation is low because everyone's doing fine without innovation. Competitiveness is low because we're all friends together in this beautiful, healthy market. Ironically, executive humility is also low because they think they're awesome because their gross margins and market share are fantastic, even though their orientation, innovation, and competition is low. Their marketing competence is terrifying, and their differentiation is non-existent because we're all going to get our slice. Now, I know the word oligopoly is hard to say, so there's another word we often use instead of oligopoly, which is much easier to pronounce. We sometimes use the word Australia. We are formerly the world's biggest oligopoly. Media, beer, supermarkets. We could go on. We were the oligopoly. Now, it's often said that nature abhors a vacuum, and by the same token, capitalism hates an oligopoly. And in around 2008 in Australia, you may have noticed this, things began to change. We avoided a recession that hit everyone else. Our dollar got super valuable, actually getting a premium over the US dollar for a while. And the psychological distance between Australia and the US and Europe just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And suddenly, they started to come. Aldi, Costco, Zara, Topshop, and they discovered it was fucking easy to make money in Australia. Remember all those Australian businesses? Oh, you'll find it's pretty difficult, mate. Australia's a difficult market. Stuff here, we're pretty good at what we do. Pretty good at what we do, mate. You'll struggle. You'll struggle. New fashion brands, you'll struggle, mate. You'll struggle. It's complex for you guys in Spain, Zara. You won't get it because here in the winter, it's summer. You won't get that. You won't survive that. That's going to be a problem for you. Strategically, you won't get that, right? That's what they said. So what we saw was all these big, giant companies piling into Australia, making more money than they could believe, and knocking over our local, oligopolistic, much poorer marketing competitors, knocking them over like there was no tomorrow. Yeah? And it was easy. And it was easy. And of course, what's happening is, it's not, look, don't get me wrong, I love Australia. I'll be Australia for the rest of my life. Australian executives are as smart as anyone else, maybe smarter. But we grew up in a fat, lazy, oligopolistic place that meant we weren't as good as our foreign competitors. And these guys came in from Spain, from the US, from Canada, and they were sharp. Because you have to be sharp there, because competition has made them sharp. And they took us apart limb by limb. It was like going to a fencing match and the other guy has a magnum. That's what it was like, yeah? It wasn't a fair fight. What's happening now, fascinatingly, in Australia is some companies are getting an international level of competition and differentiation, and some aren't. And there's no better place to study it over the last 5 years than in the Coles, Woolworths, knife versus revolver battle that's been taking place before us. You may have seen, Coles brought in a bunch of people from foreign climes with a little bit of a sharper approach to marketing, and suddenly they had a hot chef, yeah? And a very good strategy that worked. And Woolworths, as a classic oligopoly player, went, well, we got a fucking chef too. Doesn't quite make sense, but we got a chef. We'll match your chef with our chef. Can we go back now to not having any more trouble, please? And then after a while, Coles launched this extremely clever, both animal and hormone-based policy on food, which gave them a genuine leg up strategically in terms of their meat. And Woolworths went, we've got a kind of like something circular that looks like it, that doesn't really mean anything, so we can kind of match what you do. Now, please stop it now. No more differentiation. Let's just all be friends now and take our money, shall we? And then, of course, in an infamous place of corporate differentiation, Woolworths went, you know what? They've got Bunnings is making so much money. You know what we need? We need a gigantic international DIY style store. That'll sort it out for us. What got us to 2008 will not get us any further. The old white men, these CEOs that don't think customers count, you know why they think that? Because they came from the 1980s, when customers didn't count. They're not dumb people. They come from a different land, an oligopoly that no longer exists. We have to move on and get internationally good quick. And the key to it is learning to differentiate properly, to walk a different path rather than matching our rivals with similar tactics. Differentiation belongs in heaven. Finally, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to do a 2-for-1 at the end. So, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and SWOT. Let's start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've all seen it before. So, invented in 1943, What is Maslow's contribution? Well, as you know, we start with physiological needs at the bottom. If those are met, we move to safety needs, then belongingness and love needs, then esteem, and finally at the highest end, self-actualization. So what does Maslow teach us? Well, he teaches us, for example, that if I really need to take a piss, I'm not so worried about how I look while I'm taking a piss. I'm not making that up. That's really one of the insights from Maslow. Or here's another one. If I'm worried about the guy next to me beating my face in, I'm less worried about being creative. This is what Maslow teaches us. It's so banal, yeah? Now, the key question is, how do I use that to sell photocopiers? And the answer is, fuck knows. Fuck knows. I'm here to sell photocopies, and all I know is if I need to take a piss, I'm not so worried about being creative. What? I'm not exaggerating. That's what it is. There's nothing. I'm not missing something behind the pyramid. That's it, right? So, why is Maslow in every shit marketing plan you've ever seen? There's two reasons. First of all, the word Maslow sounds European and faintly intellectual. And it's got a hierarchy, and that's got to be good too. The reason we use Maslow's hierarchy of needs is we've got nothing else. Nothing else. So stick it into slide 14 and pretend you know what the fuck you're talking about. SWOT. SWOT. So, you've all done SWOTs. I've done SWOTs. I've wasted at least 4 weeks of my life doing SWOTs, right? You know what happens, right? We spend a day inanely filling out fucking boxes on a whiteboard, yeah? Rarely with any data, rarely with anything new to say. Everything's equally weighted, like it's all just going to be the same. You know, someone once did a SWOT of a SWOT. You know what they discovered? Guess what the strengths of SWOT are? None. Guess what the opportunities are? It can fill a day. Guess what its weaknesses are? It's shit. Guess what the threats are? Somebody realizes it's shit. It's bullshit. And I can prove it to you. You ready? You know, in these days, SWOT is shit, right? No one has ever fucking used a SWOT to do anything. Just waste a day. You know it. It's the same. There's no one ever sat around one of these tables filling out a SWOT and at the end of the day gone, hey, you know what? I'm looking at that SWOT and I'm realizing, holy shit, our new product launch, it's a massive opportunity next year. If I hadn't put it in that box, I would have fucking missed that, man. We'd have gone the whole year. I thought it was a threat. Someone doesn't sit there and go, oh, fuck, I'm looking at the threat box, man. Look at the threat box. Fuck, who knew our competitor was a threat to us? This changes everything. Quick, call the CEO. It never happens. It's shit. It's shit. They are the Laurel and Hardy of marketing plans. No training, no concepts, no fucking idea. I'll shove in a SWOT and ooh, Maslow's, and everything will be okay. Hopeless, hopeless shit, and we are sending them straight to hell. So, one advantage, anyone that's got a Maslow and a SWOT, and they go together like venereal disease and herpes, by the way, if you notice, they're always together. Anyone who's got one of these, you always know their shit. If you know what you're doing, you go, here we go, Maslow. Wait for it, oh, here's the SWOT. Very good. Get rid of them. So, this is what we had at the end, right? So this is what originally the AA members chose. Frankly, I'm pretty much aligned with you guys, except for a couple, right? I want brand purpose out of the heavens. I think it's a distraction. I think it's a trendy distraction. I think there's some arguments for corporate purpose, but I think for the most part, it's nonsense and we need to put it in hell. I think SWOT also has to join its brother Maslow down there in the flames as well. I'd agree with you on differentiation and targeting 100%, but I want to take zero-based budgets and I want to put them up there. They're coming to your office. Embrace them. They'll make you better. And I want sales funnels back where they belong so they'll give you proper objectives. And so there we have our heaven and hellish concepts. Thank you.